Chosen one. You didn't know it was a test, but God did. Sometimes the greatest shifts in your life come wrapped in the most confusing storms, and sometimes the moments that feel like punishment are actually preparation. You didn't know it was a test, and you weren't supposed to. That was the design. Because if you had known it was a test, you would have prepared differently, reacted differently, and maybe even moved with a mask instead of raw truth. But God saw it all, your heart, your pain, your steps when you didn't understand the path, and He called it good. The people you trusted, the ones who turned their backs, the moments when everything seemed to collapse, those weren't random. That pain had purpose. It wasn't just suffering. It was a sacred evaluation. It wasn't about the money, the status, or the recognition. It was about how you held onto your soul when everything else tried to pull it away from you. You didn't know it, but that was the moment heaven watched in silence. Not because help wasn't on the way, but because God was collecting proof of who you really were when no one else saw. If you're watching this now, you're being drawn into a moment that carries more weight than you know. And in the spirit of manifestation and connection, take a deep breath and let the energy of this moment move through you. Watch this video until the end, and in the comments below, write your warmest wishes and write Amen along with the number 99. Let your words rise into the current of the unseen. This is a sacred moment for your energy to echo through the divine halls of alignment. It's not just a comment, it's a signal, a sign, a sacred imprint of your presence. It matters more than you think. Now, chosen one, like this video. Subscribe if you haven't subscribed to the channel. And let's begin. What happened to you was never meant to break you. It was meant to reveal you. There were days when it looked like the enemy was winning, when losses piled up and confusion clouded your vision. But that was the moment your soul was undergoing a divine assessment. The silence from heaven wasn't absence, it was observation. You were being measured, not punished. And what you passed through was the qualifying round of something higher. You never signed up for the betrayal. You didn't ask to be left behind. You didn't choose the delay, but God allowed it. Not to harm you, but to see what would rise from you. Would you still hope when you had no reason? Would you still love when you were met with hate? Would you still move forward when the ground was shaking? That was the test. There were times when you almost talked yourself out of your destiny. The pain was too thick, the road too lonely, the prayers too quiet. You questioned whether the promise was even real anymore. But that questioning didn't disqualify you. In fact, it showed you still had something in you that wanted to believe. And sometimes that flicker is all God needs. You held on when you didn't know you were being watched. You kept your integrity when you had every opportunity to lose it. You stayed humble when ego could have been your escape. You forgave when it would have felt better to rage. And all of that became the silent proof you were passing what you didn't even know was a divine exam. That's why certain doors are about to open that will feel like miracles. That's why there's an urgency in the atmosphere around you. You're not crazy. You're being activated. What was delayed is now descending. What was locked is now being released. What looked like rejection was divine redirection. God was not ignoring you. He was preparing the reward for someone who proved themselves even in their blind season. And yes, this is what the blind season is. It's when you walk without knowing where you're going, but you keep walking. It's when you pray without answers, but you keep praying. It's when you give even when you feel empty. And most importantly, it's when you love when you've been bruised. That's the holy resistance. That's the warrior spirit God was watching for. And now the confirmation is in motion. People won't understand why things suddenly change in your favor, but God does. Because God saw every private tear, every unseen effort, every hidden sacrifice. And those things matter more in the kingdom than public applause. You pass the test not by perfection, but by persistence. And that kind of consistency is rare. That kind of unseen loyalty to light is what brings you into the overflow. Now, your name is being whispered in rooms you've never walked into. Your energy is being felt in places you never applied to. And the reason is simple. God is honoring the result of a test you didn't know you were taking. You were weighed, You were tried, and now you're being trusted. This moment right here, this very second, is proof that you're already walking in the reward. You just haven't seen the full picture yet, but feel the shift. The winds have changed, the silence has ended, and soon your surroundings will catch up with the confirmation your spirit has already felt. When you went through the lowest valleys, God never left you, but He also didn't reveal the outcome. Why? Because real growth happens in the hidden spaces. Real refinement happens in the silent battles. When the applause is gone, when the eyes are closed, when the cameras are off, that's when destiny decides. And now destiny is speaking clearly in your direction. You survived what was supposed to stop you. That alone speaks volumes. But you didn't just survive. You evolved. You elevated. You expanded. Your heart became deeper. Your spirit became sharper. Your vision became clearer. You didn't just pass the test. You transformed in the process. And now people will see a version of you they never imagined. Not because you changed overnight, but because you were being shaped in secret. You didn't take shortcuts. You didn't fake it. You didn't manipulate your way through. You trusted God even when it didn't make sense. Even when the answers were absent, even when your own reflection questioned if you were enough, God saw that, and He's proud. That's why certain blessings are now being expedited. That's why what felt like delay is turning into divine display. Because God needs others to see what faith looks like in human form. And that's you. Keep going. You've just begun to see the surface of what's coming. The world doesn't recognize how much you held back to protect your spirit. They didn't see the hours you cried behind closed doors, wondering if the pain was permanent. But God did. Every time you wanted to retaliate and instead chose silence, He noted it. Every time you could have quit, but instead whispered a prayer through clenched teeth, He recorded it. Every time your heart was shattered, but you still smiled to keep the peace, God counted it all. What you were walking through was more than just hardship. It was refinement. It was a divine filtration system, stripping away the excess, the false layers, the attachments that couldn't go with you to your next level. The stripping was necessary. It looked like you were losing. It felt like failure. But what was really happening was the extraction of what was unworthy of your destiny. And you didn't know it was a test. You thought it was chaos. But God was measuring your capacity to hold more. See, the reason the pressure was so intense is because your calling is not casual. You carry weight in the spirit realm, and not everyone can handle that. That's why the warfare felt personal. It was never about who left you, what you lost, or what didn't work. It was about who you would become despite all of that. And God saw you step into a deeper version of yourself when you had every reason to disconnect. You proved you were chosen not by shouting it, but by walking through fire and refusing to let it harden your heart. That's what made heaven stop and mark your name. That's why angels moved when you didn't see them. That's why favor is following you now like a magnet, because you passed a hidden test with visible integrity. God didn't need you to be perfect. He needed you to be real. And you were. You didn't always know what was going on, but you kept going. And that's why the blessings that are headed your way won't just restore you. They will redefine you. This isn't about going back to who you were before the storm. That version of you is gone. This is about becoming what the storm shaped you for. This is the moment your new identity emerges. Not the broken version, but the brave one. Not the confused one, but the crowned one. The anointed one. The one that wasn't made on stages, but in silence. And silence was loud in your life. It was loud when your prayers felt unanswered. It was loud when the doors stayed shut. It was loud when you had to pretend to be okay just to survive. But that silence trained your soul to hear God in ways no one else around you could. That's why you feel things before they happen. That's why your discernment cuts through fake words and empty promises. That's why you couldn't fit in, even when you tried. God was carving you out for something rare. Don't downplay what you carried. Don't minimize your survival. Don't shrink your spirit just to keep others comfortable. You're not who you were because the test changed you. And that change was heaven's goal from the beginning. Not to hurt you, but to elevate you. And it happened. You just didn't know you were being watched while it happened. This is why your breakthrough won't make sense to others. They'll think you got lucky. They'll think something just clicked for you, but you'll know. You'll know that what they see now is the harvest from a test they never saw. You'll know that while they were sleeping, you were sowing tears. While they were judging, you were trusting. While they were skipping ahead, you were sitting in silence with God, and God was watching. The reward is real, but it's more than money, more than opportunity, more than applause. It's alignment. It's that peace you feel even when things aren't perfect. It's that joy that bubbles up for no reason. It's the divine appointments that show up without warning. It's the energy shift when you enter a room. It's the divine yes when every door once said no. You didn't need validation to keep going. You didn't need confirmation to keep believing. You just needed God's whisper. And now the echo of that whisper is turning into a roar. The same God who observed your silent storms is about to announce your public reward. Not to impress others, but to fulfill his promise. Because God doesn't forget who you are when others do. This is more than a moment. It's the manifestation of a truth that was buried in your struggle. You didn't know it was a test, but God did. And now the results are about to flood into your life like a river that finally broke through the dam. You were faithful. You endured. You passed. And now you rise. There was a moment, one you didn't even recognize, when the entire direction of your life began to pivot. It didn't come with trumpets or announcements. It came quietly, buried under weight you didn't ask for, wrapped inside confusion that made you question everything. That was the moment you stopped reacting from survival and started moving from alignment. You thought you were losing yourself, but in truth, God was helping you remember who you've always been beneath the layers the world placed on you. You had no idea that the sleepless nights were sacred encounters. You didn't realize that the very loneliness you begged God to remove was creating a sanctuary within you. In the absence of people, you discovered presence in the echo of the silence. You found guidance. And that's when it started to shift. Not outside of you, but within. Your choices changed. Your standards rose. Your intuition got sharper. And you began to move differently. Not because you suddenly became someone new, but because the test awakened the real version of you. You were walking through days that felt ordinary, but in heaven's timeline, they were marked, timed, strategic. They were the very chapters where your next level was being unlocked. You didn't know it then, but God was walking with you through a secret passage. One that led to visibility, favor, and provision. Yes, but first required your silent obedience. That's why everything felt heavy. That's why people didn't understand you. You were living a chapter that was meant for divine eyes, not public applause. When God designs a test, it isn't to expose your flaws, it's to reveal your foundation. That's what happened. You stood when others fell. You held your character when it would have been easier to conform. You didn't retaliate, even when the betrayal burned. And though it looked like nothing changed on the outside, everything shifted in the spirit realm. That's why your spirit feels restless lately. That's why your dreams are intense. That's why the air feels charged around you. You're in the window between test and reward, and the heavens are stirring in your favor. What's wild is that you didn't even recognize how close you came to quitting. You almost let go, not because you were weak, but because the silence stretched longer than your strength, and yet somehow you kept going. Maybe it was a whisper, a word, a dream, a flicker of hope. Maybe you don't even remember why you kept pushing, but God does. He saw that tiny moment when you looked up in the dark and chose to believe one more time. That moment wasn't small. It was seismic. It shifted the atmosphere. It sent a signal through the heavens that the one he chose still believed even without proof. And that faith, that kind of blind, bruised, battered belief, it carries a weight that money can't buy. That's what God responds to. That's what's now unlocking gates, shifting timelines, and bringing divine recompense. People see the surface and assume it was easy. Let them. They didn't witness your nights of inner war. They don't understand what it cost you to stay grounded when the ground beneath you cracked. They don't know how much restraint it took to walk away instead of explode. But God knew, and He documented it all. Every silent sacrifice was recorded. Every secret moment of surrender was noted. And every time you chose obedience over opportunity, heaven applauded. That's why what's coming isn't random. It's calculated, tailored, designed just for the one who endured. Don't be surprised when blessings that don't make logical sense begin to find you. Don't be shocked when the very systems that tried to block you now have to bless you. The test wasn't to break you, it was to position you, and you're standing right at the threshold of that divine transition. Let this sink in. You were never being punished, you were being proven, and now the proof is undeniable. Your name is written into the season that's coming, not in pencil, not in chalk, but in permanent ink. Because the fire didn't burn you. It branded you. It placed a mark on you that heaven recognizes and hell fears. And that mark gives you access. You'll notice the shift, the favor, the yeses that come without struggle, the sudden opportunities, the unexplainable protection, the peace that doesn't need permission. That's what follows a soul that has been tested and trusted. You are that soul, and it's your time. There's a feeling that washes over you when God says, now. It's not loud, but it's absolute. It makes everything feel aligned. That feeling is approaching. You'll know it. You won't have to ask for signs. The shift will speak for itself. The doors will recognize your presence. The people assigned to your destiny will find you. The resources will multiply. Not because you chased them, but because you passed when you didn't even know you were being tested. You didn't need a spotlight. You didn't crave applause. You just wanted peace. And that pure desire is what heaven will always honor. Peace is coming, and with it provision, power, purpose, all in waves, all in overflow. All because the test revealed a version of you that even you didn't know existed. Get ready, because everything is about to respond to who you really are. There's something sacred about realizing you've passed through something that was never meant to be easy. There's power in standing on the other side of confusion, pain, and silence. Still holding your essence, your integrity, your divine identity. You didn't collapse. You didn't vanish. You didn't sell your soul just to survive. And now you're about to witness the divine ripple effect of what it means to be qualified by God Himself. The world can give you a trophy, but only God can give you transformation. And what you're stepping into is not a moment of recognition. It's a season of reward, a sacred unfolding that's been waiting behind a curtain of spiritual timing. You weren't late. You weren't denied. You were simply being aligned. God needed you to arrive into this moment clean, ready, not just with desire, but with depth. And now you are. The signs are subtle at first: a new peace in your heart, a clarity in your choices, a calm in your responses. Suddenly you stop fighting for things that no longer fit. You stop chasing people who overlooked you. You stop entertaining doubts that once consumed you. That's not weakness, it's wisdom. The kind that can only come after a divine test. You earn this vibration. You earn this awareness. And now the vibration of your spirit is calling in every blessing that was always meant for you. There are timelines collapsing behind you as you read this. Dead ends, loops, repeat patterns, all shutting down because you passed what tried to trap you. There are also new timelines opening ahead, filled with the people, opportunities, miracles, and revelations that match your elevation. What felt like a delay is now proving itself as divine orchestration. What looked like abandonment was really protection. And what appeared to be lack was the soil of supernatural increase. You were being grown in places no one saw, and now what has taken root will rise, like a tree planted by divine hands. Your foundation is secure. You won't be shaken by surface storms anymore. You won't be rattled by rumors or lies. You won't be triggered by closed doors because now you understand. Everything that didn't work was God whispering, not this way, not yet. It wasn't rejection, it was refinement. That's why you don't owe anyone an explanation. They saw the pain, but they didn't see the promise. They watched your fall, but they couldn't comprehend your rise. They saw your setbacks, but they never imagined your comeback would be this undeniable. They thought the silence was your ending, but they didn't realize silence is where God writes the next chapter. And now that chapter is in motion. The reason it felt so intense, so heavy, is because it wasn't just about you. God was preparing your story to become a key, a door opener, a code for someone else. You're not just walking into blessings, you're walking as a living blueprint. Others will watch your journey and be reminded that God doesn't forget, that faith doesn't fail, that real love from above doesn't abandon. You may not have known it, but your endurance rewrote something in the spiritual world. A pattern was broken, a generational cycle was shattered, a divine inheritance was unlocked, and now it's flowing to you. Not because you manipulated anything, not because you forced your way through, but because you trusted, surrendered, endured, and transformed. That's what God was looking for. Not perfection, not performance, but presence. And you showed up even when you were afraid. You kept going, even when it made no sense. You opened your heart even when it had been crushed. And now God is opening things that were sealed for a season like this. You'll notice that the resistance is quieter now. Not because the opposition stopped, but because your authority increased. You carry something different, a frequency, a fire, a resilience that came from real testing. It's in your voice now, in your posture, in your prayers, in your silence. You walk differently, not arrogantly, but knowingly, because you've tasted the valley. And now the mountaintop is inviting you higher. You're not who you were. That version of you needed to dissolve. The one who questioned their worth. The one who tolerated being unseen. The one who kept doubting their instincts. That self is gone. Not because you hated them, but because you outgrew them. You evolved because God whispered in your soul, "There's more in you." And you believed him, even in the dark, especially in the dark. Now the light has come, and it's not just shining on you, it's shining from you. Your energy is a signal now. It's drawing in what aligns and repelling what doesn't. You'll find yourself in places you never imagined. You'll meet people who feel like divine mirrors. You'll touch blessings that carry your name. Not because you begged, but because you passed. Because you said yes to the hard way. Because you honored the silent season. Because you didn't abandon yourself. Let that settle in. You didn't abandon yourself. When everything could have turned you cold, you chose warmth. When fear could have frozen you, you moved anyway. When lies tried to shape your reality, you held on to truth. That's why your life is about to feel lighter, richer, more aligned. That's why peace is arriving with power. And that's why God is about to show you what happens when hidden warriors are revealed at the right time. The right time. That's now. You didn't chase this moment. It was drawn to you like a divine current recognizing its own. This season has been searching for the version of you that survived the silence. And now that you've arrived in alignment, everything that was promised but delayed is reactivating. Not because you did something new, but because you became someone new. The test changed you in ways that can't be measured on paper, but heaven noticed. All those days where nothing made sense, they were strategic. God wasn't trying to confuse you. He was preparing your sensitivity. He wanted you to recognize peace not as a result, but as a guide. He wanted you to trust your inner knowing even when the world gave you every reason not to. And you did. You held on when logic said to quit. You surrendered when pride said to fight. And those decisions, those sacred micro-decisions, became the pattern of a life God could elevate. People may never know how much was on the line in those quiet moments. They'll see your smile and assume it came easy. Let them. Let them wonder. Let them question. Because what's about to unfold isn't for applause. It's for alignment. You're about to be placed exactly where you were always meant to be, among the frequency of those who understand the language of the soul, the weight of endurance, and the fire of divine timing. This is why you didn't fit before. You were being refined for a room that hadn't opened yet. That's why rejection didn't kill you. It cleansed you. It removed the parts of your life that would have sabotaged the blessing. And now the version of you standing in this moment, that version is built for what's coming. The test gave you spiritual muscle, emotional depth, vibrational clarity. You're no longer confused about who you are, and that's dangerous to darkness. You don't need to prove yourself anymore. You never did. But now you finally know it. The validation you once sought is irrelevant. The comparisons you once entertained are powerless. The doubts that once whispered have lost their volume. You've outgrown the storm. You've ascended the pattern, and now everything is different. Not because the world changed, but because you did. Even your prayers sound different now. They're not begging, they're commanding. They come from a place of knowing, not needing. They carry fire, not fear. Because once you've walked with God in silence, you never forget how to speak with power. And you, chosen one, have become fluent in the language of faith. You don't just believe anymore, you embody it. That embodiment is why things are about to move at a speed you're not used to. Don't be surprised when the doors open fast, when the confirmations stack on top of each other, when the provision shows up with precision. It's not a fluke, it's flow. And you didn't create it, you aligned with it. That's the reward of someone who passed the test unknowingly. The blessings feel sudden, but they're ancient. They were written long ago. This moment is just their appointed time. You've graduated not in the way the world measures it, but in the only way that counts, in the spirit. And with that graduation comes elevation, but not the kind that leaves people behind, the kind that lifts the collective. Your light is not just for you. It's a torch. It shows others that yes, the valley is real. Yes, the silence is brutal. Yes, the process is painful. But the rise is inevitable for the soul that refuses to give up. Your life is about to become evidence of that rise. And when people ask how you did it, you won't even need to explain. Your energy will say everything. Your peace will be the loudest answer. Your glow will be the sermon because you passed the test with your spirit intact. And that's rare. That's holy. That's unforgettable. You may not realize this yet, but your presence has changed. The way people look at you, the way rooms shift when you enter, the way your name carries a weight that wasn't there before, that's not coincidence. It's divine marking. God placed something on you during the test that can't be faked, that can't be stolen, that can't be undone. It's not charisma. It's not charm. It's calling, real calling, and it moves things. It aligns things. It breaks things open. And now it's fully activated in you. That's why your steps feel guided. That's why your peace feels unshakable. That's why your dreams are more vivid. God isn't introducing you to a new chapter. He's revealing the one you were always meant for. You didn't come this far just to get a blessing. You came this far to become a blessing. And now your very existence is a breakthrough. You're a reminder that resilience is real, that tests are necessary, and that God never forgets who He called, even when the world does. Get ready for overflow, for encounters that shift your trajectory, for connections that heal your heart, for resources that answer unspoken prayers. It's not just coming, it's already in motion. The test unlocked the gates, the endurance activated the access, and now all that's left is to receive. This is the part where everything begins to make sense, not just in pieces, but in divine sequence. You've walked through so many disconnected moments that felt random, unfair, and unexplainable. But now you're going to watch them form a pattern so precise, so perfect that it will be clear. None of it was an accident. Every delay, every detour, every tear, and every betrayal, it was all stitched into a plan you weren't meant to see until now. Because this very season is the unveiling. You've stepped beyond the test and into the testimony. Not the one you tell, but the one you live. You've become the evidence that God prepares quietly but reveals boldly. You are what it looks like when faith endures long enough for God to put His stamp on it. And that stamp, it's the invisible authority people feel when they encounter you now. It's why you no longer have to explain your journey. Your presence speaks it. Your light confirms it. You didn't know it, but in the middle of your most uncertain days, something ancient and divine was being built inside of you. Not a dream, not a goal, a capacity, a spiritual infrastructure strong enough to carry the weight of what's about to land in your life. And now that landing has begun, this is why certain people are reappearing suddenly, some to witness, some to reconcile, and some to be removed once and for all. The clarity you now carry doesn't leave room for confusion, and those who were part of your test can no longer be part of your table. You're not in a bitter place. You're in a better one where God's presence is thicker than your need for closure, one where you can bless and release without clinging or questioning. You passed that test too. There's a power that flows from souls who've been through silent battles. You've seen dark nights no one knows about. You've survived moments that would have shattered weaker spirits, but instead of breaking, you broke through. And now you're not just walking into blessings, you're walking in authority. This is spiritual royalty. And you didn't buy it, inherit it, or borrow it. You earned it through grit, grace, and surrender. You'll start noticing unusual ease now. Not because life is suddenly perfect, but because you've become a match for the energy of your destiny. Doors will open faster, emails will come unexpectedly, conversations will lead to acceleration, people you admire will suddenly find you. That's not coincidence. That's God redeeming the time that was lost during your preparation. And He's not just restoring, He's multiplying. You were faithful with fragments. You trusted Him with nothing. And now He's giving you more than you imagined. Not because of what you asked, but because of who you became. Your name is being honored in rooms you've never entered. Your energy is being studied by those who once overlooked you. Your path is being cleared in places that once felt blocked. And through it all, you're walking softly, but with spiritual thunder beneath your feet. You no longer need signs. You are the sign. You no longer need permission. You carry the promise. You don't need to chase. What's yours is chasing you. God is bringing things full circle. Not so you can relive the pain, but so you can reclaim the power. You're about to stand in places where you once cried. You're about to smile in rooms where you were once silent. You're about to receive from the very atmosphere that once tried to deny you because now it recognizes you. Your energy is unmistakable. Your alignment is magnetic. Your voice carries a vibration that echoes across dimensions. This isn't hype. It's holy. This is what it means to walk in divine timing. Not rushed, not delayed, right on time. And when you move like that, the universe aligns without resistance.